I think we are actually seeing another generation of design that is forming now. It's that public record of the fact that money or material has transferred from me to you. So I measure design by not its visual aesthetic or other fidelity. I value or I measure design by how well it contributes to the success of a business, which is what every department in the company ought to be aligned towards, right? So, as a designer, I think we are capable of much more. We can understand the finances, we can understand the marketing requirements, we can understand constraints of business a lot better and design a solution. What is design at the end of the day? It's a
Hey everyone, welcome to Design Talk with Hemant. In this episode, we will talk about Web 3.0 and design. I'm privileged to introduce to you Sharan Grandigae. Sharan has been in the design field for decades now, having experience working with large organizations like Adobe. With even having run his own design company called Red Experience Design, he now heads the design vertical at one of the leading Web3 firms. He is super passionate about Web 3.0 and design. In this episode, we will discuss the introduction to Web 3.0 for designers who are fairly new to the field of blockchain, NFTs, and related fields. We'll also dig deeper into why the world of Web 3 is so different for a UX designer as compared to today's or yesterday's Web 2 world. We'll talk about what the structural differences between Web 2 and Web 3 worlds are that a designer needs to be aware of. Why is it important for a designer to solve the problems of businesses in the Web3 world, and how Sharan's distinctive journey to the field of design made him strong in the way he thinks about what the role of design could be for businesses. I hope this episode will be as informative to you as it was for me. Hi Sharan, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm pretty excited to talk about today's topic being Web3, right?
Yeah.
So can we start by talking about what is Web3 in your own words?
Sure. Firstly, congratulations on your talk, your
Thank you.
podcast, and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad more people are doing this. So all the best to you.
Thank you.
Yes, we should talk about Web3, but I think just as that quote from Yalil Saranen goes, always think of design by considering it in its next larger context. I think you need to understand why Web3 even came about, and then we'll just dive into why Web3 is even prevalent now and what people are doing in order to make it better, and what our role as designers within this space is, and what we can do to make it better, right? So Web3 is the, it doesn't have an exact definition, but the way we like to think about it is the next evolution of the web. So Web 1 was in a sense where information was delivered,
Right.
in a one-way communication. Web 2 was interactive, and Web 3 is about decentralization, where even commerce can exist between peer-to-peer.
Right.
So not just commerce, but any kind of transactions and everything can happen without a trusted third party.
Right.
And honestly, a lot of people think of it as the original intent of the web. And if you look at the history, I think commerce was not allowed on the web by the people that were developing it at that time. I think I don't want to name agencies, but anyways, that commerce bit was not allowed.
Right.
So, but now it's because of cryptographic technologies, the idea of Web3 can actually exist.
You mean without having a middleman?
And that's essential, yes, without having a middleman. And that's essential because if you have a middleman, like you take any kind of regular commerce, right? If you can only send money, if I need to send it to you, if I need to send you money, somebody like a bank is going to process this transaction.
Right.
And that bank is going to keep a track of the ledgers, saying that money has to be reduced from Sharan's account, increase in Hemant's account.
Right.
So that you're trusting the bank to do this job, and the bank has service charges.
Right.
some scenarios the third party cannot be trusted.
Right.
And also you might not be able to do commerce with a certain region or entity for various reasons, right? Even if you want to do business across. So those are all hindrances to they are being able to just for commerce, if you want to take it as an example. But that is why Web3 was even, why cryptographic keys and cryptocurrencies in general evolved, and Web3 is another layer of decentralization on top of it. So now you and I can just do a transaction, and I can send it to you, and you can receive it, and know that I sent it to you, and a public ledger on the blockchain keeps track of that it is reduced from my account and increased on your account.
Right.
So there are several layers here, but that's the overarching thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you give a very brief, I'm sure there are a lot of videos on YouTube that already do this.
Yeah.
But just to set a context for our viewers, can you do a quick brief description of what a blockchain is?
Oh, yeah, sure. So blockchain is that ledger. It's that public record of the fact that money or material has transferred from me to you. Right.
So it's a series of
Yeah.
records.
It is one long chain of records and
Interconnected.
And the reason it is interconnected is because you want transactions to occur in a certain order. If I sent you $10 and you send me $100, it has to be in that order.
Right.
Otherwise, the accounting gets screwed up, right?
Right.
So you tie every record to the previous record and make a canonical or a chronological record of transactions.
Right. So you can't go in and tamper one record.
Yes. And that's how they kind of lock it, so that it's valid, because if you tampered, the whole chain would actually break.
And no single source contains this information.
No single source. The way they achieve that is actually by distributing the ledger.
Right.
So everybody who's participating on a blockchain has a copy of that ledger.
Right.
So a party has to be trusted by per se. Everybody has the original copy. And as long as it's verifiable, that transaction occurred.
And any change that you want to make,
Yeah.
You have to make it in a majority of ledgers.
You propagate a change, and that once it gets recorded by a majority of ledgers, it is considered the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of detail here, like how do you arrive at what is its truth?
Got it.
Like consensus mechanisms and all that. But all that has just assumed that those bits are part of this,
Right.
And it's been verified, and you have a source of truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Just for our viewers, we don't want to get into the details of what blockchain is, because the objective of this podcast is not to explain the details of blockchain, but to try to understand that there's something called blockchain, and the whole world is kind of driven towards using blockchain as a technology to build the future. And the objective is to talk about how UX is important in the world of blockchain. And Sharan is kind of going to help us understand where we stand in terms of understanding UX and blockchain together. And so coming back to blockchain and where it is used, can you give us some idea about where blockchain is going to be used?
Sure. I think the most obvious one is cryptocurrency itself. People transacting money between each other.
Right.
That's one direct implementation. But I think the idea of property ownership itself is something that actually is the greater point.
Right.
Money is just one aspect of property.
Right.
There's all kinds of property like art or actual like real estate or anything like that. Now, once it's been tokenized or there's a representation of that in digital form,
Right.
that can also be recorded on blockchain. And once it becomes tamper-proof, once it's on the blockchain, it becomes tamper-proof. So any place where you think this kind of tamper-proof aspect is required, you'll see blockchain entering that field.
Is that what you call NFTs?
NFTs is a example of that art.
Right.
But I think what's most misunderstood about NFT is that it's been thought of as the monkey JPEGs or things like that. It's a beautiful first use case, and I love the whole drama that happened around it and all that. But what is great is the fact that it establishes that property ownership can actually be transacted. I think that's the greater point of NFTs. So let's say it's a file. Let's say I have a file I created. I did some amount of work. I created this CAD CAM thing, and I want to be able to sell it to 100 people. I can put it as an NFT on the blockchain, and they can see that I have that ownership, and they can buy. Whoever is interested can buy it from me directly.
Okay.
And I can be assured, regardless of where they are, as long as they've initiated that transaction, I will receive the money
Okay.
for it.
Okay.
And they are assured that I will send it to them through the and this assurance comes about through the idea of smart contracts,
Okay.
which is the next layer of blockchain.
Okay.
So it's smart contracts exist as a layer on top of blockchains. You can write code to ensure that certain transactions can occur between people in a trustless way. The best form of trust is no trust. Right. Just as the best interface is no interface.
Right.
So in that same way, best the form of trust is no trust. I shouldn't have to trust you in order for a transaction to occur. That's the assumption.
Right.
And that's when actually, very ironically, that you have trust in a system.
Right.
And you don't need to trust it.
Right.
So that's what is happening with the idea of blockchain, with the idea of smart contracts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where does UX fit in all this?
So blockchain is not a very old technology if you think about it. Like I'm 44, so in my perspective, it's 2008 is not that long ago. So what is the reason I'm saying that is that it's a very young field at the moment. Not a lot of things have standards have set or anything like that. So it feels a lot like the frontier, right? Like go west and the whole American conquering the West idea, right? The idea of adventure exists here. So it's very new, very raw. A lot of things are like very tech oriented, and a lot of civilization is required, and that's where UX designers can come and play a role. So let's say, for example, this whole thing that I spoke about, nobody should know these details in order to transact. I want to send you money. I want to send you money. That's the end objective.
Right.
I should just be able to do that without worrying about the details of how to sign a transaction, what is a transaction, what is a smart contract. I shouldn't have to know all that.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
That's where UX designers can come and play a role.
Right.
And make that seamless.
Right.
And because of how young this field is, the adoption is also pretty low.
Right.
The adoption curve is very high,
Right.
but the number of people in general that have started using blockchain technologies, either in currencies or any other form, is actually pretty low.
Right.
And UX designers are key. Fixing the UX of this field is key to making this much more mass adopted.
Right.
So to increase it and make it become mainstream, that's where UX designers can play a huge role.
Right. And when you say UX, can you kind of define some of the subdomains of UX a bit more?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people may end up thinking that UX is equal to UI.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm using UX as an umbrella term over the UI layer, where it's all about aesthetics. So UX is the entire experience. So right from the get-go, how you begin to use something, how it feels, all of it is all the control of all the touch points between a customer and a system is what UX is about, in my perspective.
Right.
So it's not just the way it looks.
Right. So can you give me some real world example of a Web3 solution or a product, and take us through a UX workflow
Sure.
of that?
Yeah. So let's take the NFT example, right?
Sure.
So Rarible is a NFT marketplace.
Before you dig deeper, can you, for some people who may not understand what NFT is, can you
Sure.
explain what a non-fungible token is?
Oh yeah. So how do you define ownership of art, right? If I if I look at a piece of art, I might be so talented that I can recreate it.
Yeah.
So what differentiates my piece of work from the other artists? It's actually the certificate of ownership
Yeah.
that actually has the entire value, and that's what really an NFT is. It's a representation of the ownership. By itself, it has no value, but it is a certificate of ownership that really matters. So a lot of people say, "What is the point of an NFT? I can just right-click, download, and save it."
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything. I mean, the fact that you went to the Louvre and took photos of the Mona Lisa doesn't make it yours. It doesn't, right? Somebody actually owns it because they have that certificate of ownership. So that is what matters in this entire world, right? Whether the property, let's not just call it out, but that property, how does it belong to you? Because you have the ownership certificate.
But
And that's-
does it matter the same way as owning a physical copy of original Mona Lisa versus owning a GIF animation?
Mhm.
A copy of a GIF animation is the same as owning the original copy of GIF animation because it's the same amount of pixels,
Sure.
same size, same file, same dimension,
Sure.
same frame rate. The data is the same, but
Yeah.
if I click a photo of Mona Lisa, then
Yeah.
I don't have the same Mona Lisa.
Yeah, but assume that you can repaint the Mona Lisa as well as
But I
Da
cannot
Vinci can.
repaint it pixel by pixel. But if I download
Yeah.
a GIF animation, it will be pixel by pixel the same.
Yeah, but I'm saying that even in the Mona Lisa case, right, you can actually, there are talented people out there that can actually recreate it to that level of detail and that.
But formally, they wouldn't be owning the original,
Exactly.
so to speak.
So when you just extrapolate that same idea and they say that you can counterfeit the original Mona Lisa, you see the point then.
Yeah,
The actual certificate is what makes
yeah,
it
it's still not the original.
still not the original. So that's exactly the logic here as well.
Right.
You can recreate it to the nth degree and get it as accurate as the original, or you might even download the original file, but it doesn't mean that you own it because on the blockchain it has the records of all the people that have owned it before you, and
Got it.
the person who downloaded it doesn't have their name there. So that creates the value.
Right.
So that is what a NFT really is. It's a representation of the ownership, really.
And why the token? What is the token?
So token is nothing but a record, right?
In the blockchain.
It's on the blockchain. So it's a representation of that transaction that occurred.
Right.
So in an NFT, it's called a non-fungible token, but think of it as a unique token. I hold this unique token, so therefore this artwork is mine. That's what it's basically saying.
Okay.
And if I transfer the token to you, you now own that artwork.
And it's recorded in the blockchain.
And it's recorded on the blockchain. And that's how you verify a certificate of authenticity and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one example that I saw of installation art, right? How do you own installation art? The artist came to a location and created that installation. But people own that installation art. And that's possible only because they created that certificate on that day and signed it over to that person who bought it. So it doesn't matter whether the installation exists tomorrow. I owned it and I can photograph the hell out of it and recreate that memory. But I own that installation. That's how that's another. I know it gets a little dicey and hard to understand, but I hope that illustrates that it's the certificate that matters, the token that matters. So that's what this is. So take an NFT marketplace, right? So right from the get-go, I have to sit and explain to somebody what an NFT is. That shouldn't be the case, right? These things need to become much more obvious and more understood by everybody. So that is one thing. Then you need to have a wallet in order to transact. what the hell is a wallet, right? So that becomes another question. So how do I use a wallet? That's another hurdle. And then after I find, like, let's say the searching is as bad as Web 2 searching or whatever it is, but there's even an additional layer of which token can I use or which currency can I use in order to purchase that token. And then there's the idea of a gas fee. Who pays for the gas fee?
What is a gas fee?
So if I want to transact with you, there's a gas fee that is expended for somebody who's writing these records to the blockchain.
Okay.
There are validators. I mean, there are people. Let's just simplify. There are people whose job it is to record transactions,
Right.
and propagate that transaction to everybody else, so that everybody's ledgers update. Right. So those people are not doing work for free, right?
Right.
Their server, their electricity, all that costs them. So they charge a gas fee. Typically, it's a 0.3% and things like that. Very, very small amounts.
Commission.
It's a fee for recording the transaction.
Right.
Think of it that way, right? So there is that gas fee that exists. So what is a gas fee becomes another question. Who pays for the gas fee? The seller or the buyer? So these are all questions that exist in standards that don't exist,
Right.
that make this entire purchase of an NFT from a marketplace very hard. So there are so many of these things that we need to shave off and smoothen in order to make this whole thing work. And that's where UX designers come in. There are some examples, right? Like in the wallet, you'll get a confirmation message saying, do you approve this transaction? So the wallet is asking you. And what is a transaction? Is represented in hexadecimal. Who's reading this, right? So it's very raw. They just expose this and they expect that the user will understand what they're transacting and do the right thing. So there's lots of, and wherever there's this information arbitrage where I don't understand what something's going, there's an opportunity for somebody to screw up and mess up in the transaction. These are the parts where UX designers can come in and create a safer world to exist. It should be as seamless as it is in Web 2, or what could be even better maybe than Web 2. Web 2 is just the baseline now. So we are creating a better world. So it should also come with a better UX.
Right.
So just another frame of reference, right? Nobody's going to adopt something if it's only 1x better. It has to be 10x better. So while people like me or anybody else in the blockchain world or Web3 world can see that this is the future, we have the onus is on us to establish that the 10x value actually exists here. So it's through this work of trying to make it super simple, allow people to understand that the gas fee is nothing compared to what you would pay as a commission in the real world or in the Web 2 world.
Okay.
Right. And establish that, and you don't need a third person to verify, transact. There are all those delays and costs that are associated with involving a third party. That doesn't need to exist here at all. So there's intrinsic value, but it just needs to be packaged so much better. And that's the role UX designers can play.
Isn't that a role of a business?
It is the role of the business. Very good point. So I think I came into this world of UX before the moniker of UX existed. So I think we were called application designers and all that at one point, right?
Yeah.
In Adobe, that term was just getting utilized.
Right.
I think it was just past Steve Jobs releasing the iPhone, where the idea of a designer in applications actually was a formalized thing. I think we are actually seeing another generation of design that is forming now. And I'm just sensing that across the board, where designers are not in this, silo where they're inventing things on their own. They're very much a part of the business. What is the point of design, if not to solve the problem of business, right? So I measure design by not its visual aesthetic or other fidelity. I value, or I measure design by how well it contributes to the success of a business, which is what every department in the company ought to be aligned towards, right?
Yeah, I was asking JD also in the previous podcast about when do you involve a designer into a product discussion?
Yeah.
Do you involve him when the product is built and you want to beautify it,
Yeah.
or do you involve a designer in the beginning of the product brainstorming?
Yeah.
And he was also kind of mentioning that you want to involve a designer right at the beginning.
Absolutely. Because they can't come in and solve a problem that exists at the foundational level.
Yeah, because designers are
Yeah.
seen often as UI designers.
Exactly, and that's a mistake, right? And that itself has evolved to people have eyes. Sorry, I'll take a step back. When I started my business,
Before you start with that,
Yeah.
I kind of want to cover this section where you introduce you go through your journey a bit.
Sure.
You tell us about, because you come from an unconventional background.
Yeah,
You're not a formally design educated fellow,
yeah,
right? So
Yeah.
you take us through your journey for a bit.
sure. Yeah, you'll have to bring that train of thought back. You bring the train back on the tracks
I'll
later.
try
on.
my best.
So, but yeah, I came to design in a very unexpected way myself. I think so. Right out of college, what I studied was business in college, and we took part in a business plan competition. Got a started our first business at that point. So we were developing this identity management system, blah blah blah. But post that, we started our dev shop. We being my twin brother and I. So we started a dev company, and we started developing products. And what we would call those products were beautiful products. So we'd study these human-computer interaction books from Microsoft and things like that, because it would come with your Visual Basic course and things like that. So we'd understand the point of this, why a button is placed here and not there, and things like that. And the best language we had at that time was to call it beautiful software. And I didn't know we were practicing UX at that point. Nor did the rest of the world also, I suppose. But that's how we came to it. So later on, when I got a message from Phil Clevenger at Adobe, if you remember him. Yeah. So I joined Adobe, and that's where I actually learned what I was doing, was design. For applications, which is UX design. And there I learned a lot about and fell into the depth of design. But I felt the way it was being addressed was this department, broken up in several chunks. Everybody's got their own jobs. You only do certain things, and I guess that's the nature of large companies, right?
Right.
But to me, I was never satisfied with receiving the information late and saying, "Go solve this problem." Whereas the problem might have been right in the beginning. What if we had approached it a certain way, right? So I started having conversations with the engineering managers at Adobe and things like that, and they were very, Raghavan, if you remember.
Yeah.
So we had very early conversations and were able to structure the PRDs, the product requirements documents, in a very nice way, and I felt that was what my contribution should be, right, as a designer. So now it's the next evolution. So after I ran, I'll come back to it. So after Adobe, I started a company called Red Experience Design. So there we worked with 100+ projects. I think tons of users, right? We are addressing tons of users. So there I learned what the role of design could be. So I started having conversations with founders and understanding their problems, and the kind of solutions we were coming up with was that the founders themselves hadn't figured out a solution for. Like how can we supplement the ongoing services with advertising on a platform and things like that, right? So it was not a requirement that came from the client, but we were able to contribute because the first question we asked them was, what is your business doing?
Right.
So I thought that was a very refreshing change for people who came looking for design.
Right.
So they're like, when we started worrying about their business, it was a refreshing change for them. So I learned a lot during that time. And I felt design cannot, come as an eventuality or a subsequent step. It is a iterative part. It's a part of the business, and it has to contribute to the bottom line. Otherwise, you're not doing it.
Right.
So I had deeper realizations after that, where the agency model itself wasn't working for me. So, for example, the way you become better at something is through iterations, to put out stuff, learn that it works. This is the reason it works or doesn't work,
Right.
and then you get better at it,
Right.
right? So you need those cycles. But what was happening in agency is the client is in the mindset to keep the cost low,
Yeah.
so they only ship small amounts of work to you or whatever they basically require. And when you try to do more, they're looking at it as raising billing for them, so they're hesitant. And because you're outside the company, you also don't get the metrics of whether it worked for you or not,
Yeah.
worked for them or not.
Because it's
So how do I
confidential.
sharpen my intuition, my instincts of design? I can't. So this whole bit of tossing it over the fence wasn't working for us. So I got a opportunity with the Arcana Network, the company that I'm working with, and through acqui hire scenario, I'm now a part of the company, and it is a very much I feel my next evolutionary step, because I am a part of the company, worrying about the problems, thinking of products before they even might occur. And I think that's the way it ought to be. So I'm not thinking of myself as a UX designer anymore. I'm thinking of myself as a designer.
Right.
It's slightly different from probably the owners of the business, because I don't do some of the functions, but I cannot be held less responsible for the outcomes.
Right.
And that's how I think of myself.
Right.
So that's been my evolution in terms of design and thinking and all that.
Very interesting. So, bringing you back to what we were discussing, I
Yeah.
was asking you the onus of thinking about all that, bringing the product's messaging
Yeah.
to the users. Shouldn't that be on the business? Why are you putting so much on the shoulders of a designer, that communicating that this is how the product should be?
Yeah.
Why are you putting the onus of that on the shoulders of a designer? And shouldn't that be the responsibility of the business to communicate all that to the user?
Communication, sure. But I think what I really want to highlight is that the alignment of everybody within the company has to be in a certain direction. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed
So you're saying it should be on the shoulders of a designer as well.
as well.
Okay.
Right. And I would say even like, somebody on the assembly line should also be knowing what they're contributing to, because you don't know how something can affect the end goal.
Right.
So as a designer, I think we are capable of much more. We can understand the finances, we can understand the marketing requirements, we can understand constraints of business a lot better and design a solution. What is design at the end of the day? It's a solutioning, a method of solutioning a problem, right? So what is the right fit? Something that works within all these constraints.
Right.
Phil Clevenger had a very great statement. He said, "Design exists within constraints."
Right.
It's a beautiful statement,
Right.
because unlimited time, unlimited money, anybody can create anything.
Yeah. So this reminds me of a small little discussion I was having with one of my colleagues at Adobe. His name is Ramesh Srinivas Raghavan. So
Yeah.
I was, you know him.
Oh, yeah.
So I was having this discussion. I was saying, I'm a creative guy. I need some time to think about a solution.
Yeah.
So please give me time to think about it, and I can come up with a very creative solution. This was way back, like at least 12 plus years back.
Yeah.
And he gave me a very weird response, which kind of triggered a very nice thought in me. And even today, I kind of remember that. He said, "Okay, fine. You get a very comfortable amount of time to think,
Yeah.
and you say that I'm a creative guy. I need a lot of time to think about it, and I can come up with a wonderful solution."
Yeah.
And you call that creativity, but isn't it? If I restrict you, and if I give you very limited time, and if I give you a lot of constraints,
Yeah.
and ask you to think about the solution, isn't that the creativity? Isn't that going to trigger you to think creatively? When I am under constraints, I
Yes.
actually think creatively. And if I'm actually not having constraints, and if I'm given full freedom, I don't think I can think creatively. I just wander off.
Yeah.
So what are some of the major constraints you have seen? when it comes to Web3 as compared to Web2?
So, constraints that I've seen in Web3. Okay, the first constraint I would say is the understanding itself, right? There's a huge difference of understanding between Web2 and Web3, and there are groups that don't want what do you call it, Web3 to survive. Web3 to exist. And any new technology, right? It threatens the incumbents, and that's no different here.
Okay.
So the existing system are anticipating job losses, anticipating that they will not become a part of this new system, and they're trying to protect their fiefdoms as much as possible. So I think that's one of the big constraint that we are, as designers of Web3, we have to deal with. And there's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's being propagated by these incumbents.
How do you deal with that as a
Exactly.
designer?
So you create a better narrative that explains things a lot better, makes it very clear. You ask questions. If a transaction has to go from me to you, why do we need a third party if it can be performed the another way?
You prove that this is a better world.
Let it be evident, self-evident, and that happens with marketing. It happens with design, in making it clearer. That 10x thing I was telling you about, it's only going to get adoption after that 10x. It's upon us to kind of establish all that. And right now, I think the big constraint is the unfamiliar technology, the FUD that's being created by the incumbents, and the fact that it's so new makes it, so raw at the end of it. So these are all the challenges that we need to kind of conquer, I think.
Okay. What are some of the structural differences you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, this I think was one of the biggest insights for me. Right, there's so many things that just form because of structure. Just to give you a very simple example, right? You enter a new restaurant, right? You look for where the loo is. The loo is not usually the most visible part of a restaurant,
Yeah.
but you somehow get a feeling of where the kitchen is, right?
Yeah.
So because you understand that when building buildings, people try to economize. They keep all the plumbing in one part of the building,
Yeah.
right? That itself will tell you that the loo is near the kitchen somewhere.
Yeah.
So you look in that direction, and you often you find it. What's the point of what I'm trying to say? The point is that once you understand how systems work, you understand the reason, or you're able to make better judgments about how something needs to be, how something works, right? And you're able to make judgments based on that front. So in a similar way, this the structure of Web3 needs to be kind of understood in order to build upon it, right? And understand why there are certain things work a certain way, right? So first and foremost, the idea of decentralization is very important, right? So why does that affect things, right? So you have these large organizations right now that hold these data centers and all that.
Yeah.
So everything runs through them. They take care of but the costs exist, right? They are running a data center, electricity, all these other things exist. How do they compensate for that, right? So they compensate by having advertising and things like that, because the service itself they'll try to make it free, but they compensate it for it by advertising and such. So typically Web2 products, right? The goal seems to be that they want to keep the costs free to the users. How do they achieve that when electricity costs, data centers, everything cost money, right? So they do things like advertising. And because of that, there's a need for them to start mining data about their users in order to serve them better ads.
Advertisements.
And they become more of these advertisers rather than the service providers of a certain thing. The service itself is an excuse now,
Right.
just so that they can serve ads.
Ads and make more revenue.
Make more revenue. Why is that happening? Because of the structure of the systems. They want to keep this free and blah, 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 right? Decentralization, take the flip side of the equation, right? The assumption right from get-go is I'll pay for everything as a user. I'm not getting anything for free. I have to pay for everything. why is but that is a better thing, because now you can just pay for the service that you're getting. That guy who's creating the service can be focused on delivering better service to you, and everything is seamless. Nobody has to rely on ads.
But do you think that is s- like? Do you think that is something that users would pay for?
Absolutely, it depends on the service, of course, but the idea that we are getting a free ride is becoming clearer to everybody, that I am the product in Web 2. And that's not anybody being evil or anything of the sort, but it's the structure that led them there, right? That is what I'm trying to highlight. You just flip the equation. Nobody's out there to, kill somebody or, exploit somebody or anything like that. Some people might be. So there are, sections of society where, things are not right with their heads. But everybody, a large majority wants to make an honest living because they want to be able to sleep at night.
Right.
So to serve that, these mechanisms are what stop them. And because one company is doing this particular thing, everybody else ends up doing it. That free service, and let's figure out how to make money on the users by mining their data and all that. I think that's a structural problem.
Right.
Decentralization, because the nature of it means that everybody is running their computers and I have to pay gas fees at every point. It becomes clear that everybody is making money. Everybody has to make money. I have to pay for whatever I'm using. It becomes a known expectation of a user. And they're clear. It might be smaller amounts, and that's what is possible through this method. But I think it's a structural issue. And that's the difference between Web 2 and Web 3. It keeps it much more honest.
Okay.
The user is not expecting a free ride, and the corporation doesn't think of the user as the other. Right? So that's one of the big things. The next large change because of the next big aspect to consider because of the structural difference is the fact that the blockchain has all the data. Like let's say we are working with a blockchain that does social media, right? The blockchain has all the data, all my posts, all those likes and all those things has been recorded on the blockchain. So what is the app? An app is today in Web 2. It's thought of as the UX layer, the backend, and the storage of the user's data. Right? It's all within one walled garden. But when it exists on the blockchain, the data exists on the blockchain. The UX layer is the app.
Right.
And how well you do, and your measure of
data is in the blockchain.
Yeah, because the data already exists on the blockchain. My only measure of how well I do as an app is on the user experience layer. And I only have one person to serve at that point as a user.
Right.
So that's what I can focus on. You get it? The whole thing is the alignment of all the incentives are in one direction now. And because the switching cost, because the data is on the blockchain, switching between an app to another app is so easy. I'm going to compete like, if I was an app developer, I would compete like crazy in order to make the user experience superb.
Right.
And that's another structural.
Okay.
It's coming from the way the structure is different from Web 2.
Right.
Right. So then the idea of decentralization itself, there's a culture of community ownership. So a lot of projects, when they launch, they establish or they publish these reports which show that the majority is actually owned by the community. Now, who is the community? The users are your community, and they're paying for it with the tokens of the project, right? So that itself changes the nature of who you serve. And when your incentives are aligned with that of your users, you actually develop good systems that take care of the users. So a lot of times in Web 2, as a UX designer, I'm supposed to be advocating for the user, right?
Right.
But the bill is being paid. My bill is being paid by the company owner, right? So when it comes to, you can understand what I need to do.
Right.
If there's a moment where I have to compete against the user's interest and the company's interest, I'm obviously going to side with the company's interest because that's the guy who's paying me, right?
Right.
So it lends to a very exploitative view of the user
Right.
in this structure. But in a community-owned thing, you're actually taking a very different view of things. You're serving the user because that itself is a service to the project.
So what is the stakeholder's position here?
So I could be a user and own the project, become a minority owner of the project.
So what do businesses mean here?
It changes, right?
It changes, but what do they mean here?
The exact paradigm doesn't exist. You have projects now. So that's why the entire language actually is very different in Web3.
Right.
You call them projects, you call them protocols. You don't call them companies, you don't call them organizations.
Right.
I mean, organization is a smaller part, but you don't think of them as corporations anymore. The structure, the nature has completely changed.
Can you give an example for this?
So like that, going back to that NFT marketplace thing, the Rarible has a token called Rari, right? You need to own that to own a part of the community. You can just buy that token and own that community. And you can also generate there are projects where you can generate tokens by the ownership, how long you've owned a particular token and things like that. So you as a user anybody can suddenly become a part of the community. So and I can do things that I actually generate more of the tokens that I own of like the Rari token, for example, that benefit the Rari project. So and because more people have a demand for that Rari token, it actually increases the value of the Rari token.
Can you take an example of a Web 2.0 product that is owned by a business and then give an equivalent Web 3 solution?
So, when you say Web 2, you're thinking corporations, right?
Yeah.
Like the corporate structures.
Yeah.
Who is the owner of the corporation? Your shareholders.
Yeah.
That's it. The shareholders are very distant from the users of the products.
Yeah.
So their interest is in only for the price of the shares to rise.
Yes.
They don't care how it rises. So you have things like really strange things like lots of layoffs when the company can actually afford to keep the employees on. Who is the company working for then? The value systems are very different in Web 2, right? So that becomes the nature of things in the Web 2, as opposed to this, where the community ownership is actually increasing the value of the project. It is actually measured by how many people are owning the tokens.
Right.
Distribution, it's measured by distribution.
Right.
So things like this is a structural problem. It's a structural difference that has caused it. So that I actually spoke about the incentive structures. So that's one more thing. I think another big effect of the structural difference is censorship. So for some reason, let's take some social media, right? Any social media company, people post messages and things like that, or images, whatever it is, and suddenly it becomes the responsibility of the company to censor certain projects or certain posts and things like that. Why is it their responsibility, right? Because they own the company.
Yeah,
right?
It's their platform.
It's their platform. You have somebody to blame. But what is happening because of it? That company imposes its view on the world.
Right.
Let's say I'm a social media company that spans 50 countries. It's not an unheard of scenario, right?
Yeah.
I, sitting in one country and with values that work in that particular place, am imposing my view across my social media, which now spans 50 geographies or 50 countries. Is that right? Culturally, things can be different from different places, right?
Yeah.
So how can this be the right way to censor? It cannot. It shouldn't be. So, but the model of censorship being done by the companies exists because of the structure of the companies in Web 2. In Web 3, the assumption is all data exists out there. It's up to you as a user to prevent yourself from watching certain things or prevent your children or whatever it is from seeing certain things because you feel that that's the right thing for you.
Right.
And that might be influenced by your culture, right?
Right.
So I should be. I mean, as an adult, why am I being prevented from seeing certain things? Because who's to decide in my world what is right and wrong? So I should be the one to decide, and that's exactly what can actually happen when you think of a decentralized system. The censorship can actually exist at a individual level in that case, because all the data exists. Now there are other more insidious things that are happening, like political leanings of a company. That person doesn't want a certain voice to exist. The owner of the Web2 company
Right.
doesn't want a certain voice to exist. They can just deplatform them.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They could be doing it because of their own reason, or they could be doing it because of the pressure put on them from an external agency.
Yeah.
Is that right? It shouldn't. Free speech is a fundamental right. It should be a fundamental right for everyone. I know within constraints and all that stuff, but you cannot deplatform somebody just because they expressed a view that's different from yours.
Yeah.
What happens because of this? You have these like silos which are formed where everybody is standing in their corners, right? And nobody's talking to each other. Where's the discourse? Where's the public town square? Where's the exchange of ideas? That is what has succeeded for us for millennia. Why is that suddenly changed because of the way social medias are treating censorship? And they think of it as the fiefdoms. It doesn't work. That model doesn't work anymore. It's anachronistic. We need better structure, and that's what Web3 offers in a large way. That decentralized nature actually brings people closer together in a very strange way.
So fundamentally, Web 3.0 is extremely different structurally as compared to Web 2. So that calls for fundamentally different design patterns also.
Absolutely.
Do we have certain design patterns already defined for Web 3?
There exist certain views, but just as everything else, right? You try what worked so far, and then you make modifications based on that. So that's the cycle that's been going on right now.
Okay.
But what I want is for people, designers that are coming into this field, to understand how the structure actually plays such a big role, in forming your and it expresses itself in so many different ways, right? I just give you some examples. So understanding what is making that happen actually makes you come up with better solutions
Right.
to the problem. So things like this, need to happen. So some patterns exist, some patterns will be developed, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Right. So for a UX designer, I can think of, based on what all you said, I can think of things like, okay, I as a UX designer need to understand the world of Web3 more.
Yep.
Fair enough. But as a process of design, what needs to change in what I do?
It's important to know why Web3 even came about, right? What is it fighting? What was the thing that it was dissatisfied with that it came to be? That is what needs to be understood. The structures so far, I mean, the internet felt free and open at one point. It was very exciting. I don't know if you remember, but we used to dial up modems and all those things.
Yeah.
We'd join, and there was something exciting, and you'd join these forums and discuss various things, and all anonymously, right? So that somehow got lost in Web 2, where everything became consolidated with just a few names. That, I think, is changing again with Web3. The Web3 came about because of that. It's a reaction to the consolidation of power. And that is what needs to be understood. And what it is a signal that another world can exist. The world that formed because of these large conglomerates, tech companies taking over, it isn't the only way. There's another way that is actually possible. And that came about with the invention of the blockchain.
Do you think these big companies will change with blockchain becoming more and more mainstream?
Definitely.
How?
Because it changes the nature of power, the concentration of power.
Are you saying the products from big companies are going to get weaker or more
No, I think there's room for both, and people will have more choice in the future.
so more competing products will come
You'll have
in,
more competing products.
which are not from these big companies.
Exactly.
So equally powerful products are going to come in.
Yeah, and you'll be able to make a choice as to this works better for me, or that works better for me. I mean, there are certain places where Web 2 makes sense. High speed transactions and things like that.
And which also means that more and more opportunities will come in for UX designers to design products that are competing with big companies' products.
Yeah, you don't have to think anymore that I'm working for this company, therefore I have to serve it company, and I have to think of the customer as the resource to steal from.
Right.
You don't have to think that that's the only model that exists.
And,
you can think in a
today,
very
if I want to work on a particular product that is built only by this big company, I have to join that big company. But going forward, maybe there'll be 10 more products from small companies which use blockchain, which compete with this big company's product. So I have 10 more products that I can work on which are similar to this.
It can be. And the way people engage on Web3 it's a very crowdsourced kind of approach to things in the first place.
Right.
So the culture is very different. Just to talk about the softer side of things, right? The culture itself is a little different in the way Web3s work. Yes, there are these people who are the core teams that keep pushing the project, but it's a very open source kind of culture where people can come and contribute from everywhere and make that particular project better if that's what they believe is going to help and succeed. There's a project called Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
It is contributed by so many developers across the world, and it's a massive and very amazing and highly evolved in terms of technology project. Bitcoin itself is another huge project that exists and most familiar with everybody, and it's happened because of contributions from people. Not working for that group or anything of the sort, and it's happening in a very open source kind of way. So it's a different mindset altogether, I would say.
What do you see as opportunities for UX designers going forward?
It's enormous. It's the open
even bigger than what it is today.
Absolutely bigger than, because right now in a very real way, there are standards, there are expectations, there's a conversion rate. These are all metrics that exist, right, for how to do well in Web 2. So designers are typically just implementing these ideas and going forward. But here you get to reinvent. You get to think from first principles away and say, is this the solution that works? If you're so inclined, there's a open field here. So it's a green field. Yeah.
What is the kind of mindset you would recommend a UX designer to have to get into Web3? Because most of them that I see and interact with, they kind of follow a tutorial, they kind of follow a course. And I get asked a lot of times that I want to get into this field, what course should I take?
To Web3. Okay.
No. I want to be a UX designer.
Okay.
What course should I take? Or I want to be a UI designer. What course should I take? So that's the mindset that I see, which unfortunately is a very closed mindset, I would say. It's like not very aspirational, not very forward thinking. So I feel that there's a lot more that they should do. There's a lot more that they should think. So what is that mindset that you like? What kind of thinking should one develop?
So I'll answer it with the way we kind of hired at Red, right? So because I was hired into Adobe without my background check in which degree did I get and all those things, because if they went down that path, I'm not a designer. I didn't study as a designer. I came to it, right? I was doing the work before I before I realized I needed a degree, right? So that's how I came into it. So I kept the same idea going forward in Red when we hired. So we hired chemical engineers who showed an interest. We had architects. We had interior people. We had even from related fields like graphic design, animation, things like that. So, and the most amount of success that I saw was firstly in the group that came from outside of design, because they did it intentionally. They came to it because they were interested. And any place that has you come to with more interest, you'll do well.
Right.
But more than that, the subgroup within that is somehow architects, people with architecture backgrounds, seem to understand UX much better. I don't know what it is.
Oh, is
That form versus function balance or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm not an architect, so I can't tell you.
it?
But
JDS.
yeah, so they kind of get a good sense of what UX design is about. But I think the highest um, rated quality, I would say, is a curiosity. How does something work? That maybe it's that engineering mindset, right? That partly comes in architects. How does something work? I think that once you start asking that question, it makes you figure out the solutions to that problem. So that curiosity is what I think drives a lot of design. And I think once you have that, you really can survive anywhere.
Very interesting, because I asked a similar question to Jay,
Okay.
and he was saying why. So he was saying the answer to my question was you should always have the why in your mind.
Yeah. Sure.
So, and you are saying you should always have the how in your mind.
No, well, yeah, it's. I think it's kind of like, I mean, semantics aside, but I think we are getting to the same point,
Same
right?
point, yeah.
Where you want to understand the core problem.
Correct.
So and you might approach it through why and get a more philosophical answer, which
Curiosity
is
is
also
what
good.
you both
Yeah,
mean.
yeah. But I think the idea that you want to shave layers and understand how it works below,
Yeah.
is the
Get to the crux of it.
get to the crux of it.
Yeah.
You might want to look at a clock and understand how the gears work, right?
Yeah.
Or you might look at a society and ask why does it function a certain way.
Yeah.
It's the same thing to me. It's that curiosity which gets to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't just jump into coming up with a solution, but get to understand what you're solving, why you're solving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lesser celebrated aspect, which is I think philosophy should drive you. I think if you're a student of philosophy in any way, I think that you'll succeed a lot better.
Okay.
So, and that comes from wanting a certain worldview. You have a worldview that says this is the ideal, right? And this is what these are the things I can do to achieve that ideal. I think that comes from philosophy, right? So, I think if you have that, you'll take the micro steps in order to get there eventually. I think that's another driver.
Okay.
Yeah, because what we're doing here is shaping the world.
Right.
All of us. I mean,
Right.
it's not just UX designers, but all of us are shaping the world.
Yeah.
And so you should have that thing where you understand what the ideal is.
So I do have many other topics that
Sure.
we have shortlisted kind of, but we'll probably get to those in the future
Yeah.
podcasts.
Happy to. There's a lot to take in. Yeah. So yeah, I think we should break this up and have several conversations. I
But
think it'll be interesting.
before we end this podcast, I would love to hear some recommendations of books from you.
Oh yeah. So some of my favorites, I'll say. I don't want to name the.
It can be about design, it can
Yeah.
be about Web3, it can be about anything else in general, which may help shape up a mind
Yeah.
to mature towards thinking the way a designer should think.
Sure. If you're anyway entering Web3, you should read the Bitcoin white paper. It's not a book, I know, but it's a 9-page
Sure.
document. But you should read it.
Yeah.
So that's a good starting point, and it explains it's very readable. It's not very technical. So that's something that one should read. But apart from that, I don't want to name just design books. I think the design of everyday things, Don't Make Me Think, Hooked, all these are known books. I don't want to name them in my list. So I would say the Eric Rye's Lean Startup. That's been one book that has really helped me think about startups itself. Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. There's another book, I forget their two authors, Good to Great. That's another book that really puts things in perspective, right? But of Guns, Germs, and Steel, I think that was a very enlightening book, and Sapiens is to me a follow-up of Guns, Germs, and Steel. So I think that's another favorite of mine. Of late, I've been reading The Sovereign Individual. It feels like I should have come to it long before, but it's something that I came to now. But it's been very enlightening. So so far, I'm still in the middle, but yeah, this is one of those books. Do I have other recommendations? I think I've hit 5. No, I don't know.
Kind
So,
of. Yeah.
all right. So yeah, these are my next time I'll come up with others.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much, Sharan. We have had a very insightful peek into the future. I think UX designers should start looking into what Web3 looks like
Yeah.
and start understanding the world, as the foundations are very different from what it has been up until now.
Yeah.
And we should start preparing to understand how the world works, without which we'll not be able to design for the future.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was very insightful, very informative, and I really hope we'll sync up and talk a lot about a lot more deeper topics around the Web3 and the blockchain.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely talking to you. And yes, I hope this has just been a video that helps people and other UX designers who are aspiring to get into this space.
Yeah,
I hope it signals to them that we need more of them.
people to get into
So
this.
yeah, please do get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm available on Twitter, Sharan01x. That's my handle.
Yeah, I'll
So
put it up on the screen.
yeah, sure. So any new designer who wants to reach out, happy to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Alright everybody, that was it for the introduction for the Web3 design episode. Don't forget to follow Sharan on the social media. I've posted the links in the description. Please let me know if you have any designers or design leaders you would want to see on the podcast and what you'd like them to talk about. I'll be happy to reach out to them. Please don't forget to share and like this video. Subscribe to this channel for updates on the upcoming episodes. We'll be back soon with another episode with Sharan, where we dig deeper into the more visual examples of Web3 issues and potential design solutions and the opportunities for UX designers in the world of Web3. Until then, stay creative and I'll see you in the next one.